So when we published this book, it is a very, very warm and beautiful book. There's nothing I would like to change about this book. When we published it, there were all the librarians started to talk about it on the internet. 70. It started with, and it ranged from, does anyone else hate this book? To stories of children who were taking it out into the playground at lunchtime, who were taking it home to their parents. It is a book that has just very, very wide reactions, and my feeling is that the more times you read it, the more, you know, you stop seeing all those initial things, and I personally feel very comfortable with my mortality. And I was speaking once to a child of 7. Well, I was speaking like this, and there was a child of 7 in the audience who had read it, and she stuck her hand up and said, "I love that book." And one of the women in the audience asked her, said, "Can I ask you how you feel about it being such a sad book?" And she said, you know, loudly in front of everybody, she said, "I love the sadness in it."
So, I said, let's buy it, and the editor at the time said, nobody in Britain wants this book. Everybody hates it. They know that nobody will buy it. So I took back a number of copies. We had translation put inside. We took it to 2 schools. Just about every parent was outraged of the school. I mean, we had so much hate mail, it was amazing. And I just started a new company called David Bennett Books, so it was a great way to start. All the bookshops where I live refused. They all said, we'll never stock it. Because of the outrage, it made me think, actually, I should just publish it then, because outrage is good. And there's nothing in this book that isn't just great fun, beautifully written, beautifully illustrated, and quite different from anything that I think would be homegrown. But it dealt with a subject which I quite liked, which was animal poo. Kids are always interested in that. My kids were the right age for that. We published it, and it sort of went okay, but The Guardian and New Scientist and BBC Two all did huge coverage on this book, and the sales just rocketed. So that was a wonderful surprise. So that was really good, and I simply bought it because I loved it. There was no other criteria. So it's a great book, and it's not going to come out of an English publisher, that's for sure.
We certainly did not start out to publish foreign picture books, to publish translated books. We started out to publish some really good, really interesting, really innovative, original books. And it just happened that one of those books, and I suspect quite a few, many others, was in a different language. And we found this book completely by accident. I have found out since that Un Petit Chaperon Rouge had been to 2 Bolognas, it had been to 1 Frankfurt, and yet nobody had even inquired about the English language rights. When we did approach a French publisher, Axel, a wonderful independent publisher in the south of France, they were almost falling over themselves backwards that a British publisher was speaking to them. And as the 18 months have gone on, and I've just found that story more and more often, I mean, we loved this book. It was everything we really wanted, and I think for a new publisher, for an independent publisher, you have to do something a little bit different to make a splash. It was so stylish, it was edgy, it was perfect, but we did have to question, could it really work in English? We did an experiment. We asked a designer to take the French words off the pages. Then we showed it to groups of adults, including our other authors, and then we took it into 2 schools. And without fail, the adults who we showed the book to, well, we asked them, where do you think it's from and what do you think of this book? And without an exception, every adult said, well, it's definitely not British. It's far too stylish. And at a push, they said European, and the most bookish said French, fairly quickly. And then we took the wordless pages into our local primary schools and we asked the children. And I think, I have to say that the wonderful thing about children's acceptance is that they don't attach nationality or meanings to books. I think they just accept as it was. Of course, to a 6-year-old or a child around that age, a book is not English, it's not French, it's not British if they're simply shown the illustrations. It just is.
And death is another thing that obviously children are encountering. My daughter lost one of her grandfathers a few years ago, and she sees dead pigeons and foxes, and I think it's really important to have books about death. And I think Ulf Nielsen? I think it's a wonderful book, The Funerals. I've read it in German, and there's also a nice German film about it. Have you seen the film? And I'm glad that it's available in English, and that these publishers are sort of challenging all the assumptions that publishers have, what works and what doesn't work. I mean, another good example for that, I think, is the Gruffalo, where everybody said, we can't do this, we can't sell co-editions, it's in rhyme. No publisher would say, everybody said we can't do a book in rhyme, and that's one of the big examples of, challenge these assumptions and take risks. I think it's really great that all these people here are doing that.
And the ones that didn't work, this was one that we thought was a very interesting book at the time, but I'm afraid it did not sell, and I think the art style proved to be too challenging in conjunction with perhaps the surreal story. I think sometimes surrealism doesn't always work in the British market. That's a generalisation. But in this case, the imaginary friends theme just didn't quite seem to work with this very challenging artwork. But he's a very acclaimed artist. And these books, I was surprised. I loved these. I thought it would be great to have a preschool series with a different look. And I thought Kevin was great fun. But nobody else seemed to. And they were very difficult to get into the shops. And when I asked why, we were told that the art looked too European. This was several years ago, and maybe things have changed a bit, but of course it's too late for poor Kevin, who has gone to the place where books go when they don't sell.